here for communication cultural change. And common cultural change is shorthand for fitting in our essentially a history area in our discipline. And our communication media and ethics identity emphasizes, as you all probably heard many times, media studies, that combination of PR and advertising, brand management, and then a third tier that emphasizes social media. Well, each of these gives us a ton of benefit, right? Let's start at the back end and say social media, work in social media right now. This is the number one continuously growing area. And it varies in terms of what that opportunity looks like, how that growth works. It varies on a number of factors, right? Who's the organization you're representing? How are you managing it? What is your training? What's the success level? What are the duties entail? And you know what? That's a lot of minutia. That's a lot of stuff. In other words, well, and that's why we devote some courses to kind of exploring those ideas, building assignments around kind of broadening our introductions, our familiarity with variations in social media. And you know what? Some of those classes pair well with other majors on campus and majors that we can kind of spend, if we want to think of it like currency, spend our electives. We have a digital marketing degree. It's relatively young, and they partner with us quite often. We have data analytics, but I got to tell you that data analytics skews heavy in the math direction, right? So it's very much that behind the scenes. And then you can definitely think about the identity of the communication degree as we're forging content creators. We're helping you train yourself in a number of ways and capacities, but content creation is an industry term, right? It's very in vogue because it can mean anything, right? And so think about that in the context of this semester, for example, our comm classes on the ground will be looking in three different directions. This class is looking at media and television history. We're going to look at communication and cultural change through the lens of television and how it evolves as a mass medium. You may say to yourself, okay, television, that's a little bit of a dying medium. Like people don't quote unquote pay for cable as much anymore, right? Everyone's as they say, cord cutter or what have you, right? No, dude, I don't do TV anymore. I'm streaming. I just do Netflix, chill or whatever, Amazon Prime, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Disney. But you get what's going on if you sort of like pull the curtain back just a tiny bit. I think everyone's generating this awareness finally, what's been going on for years, which is, well, these are all the cable channels that existed. Everyone's developing their own independent model framework. And now, oh, by the way, if we think about our cable bill, right? So let's think about a cable bill. Let's make it look like some terrible letter that you got in the mail and you don't want to open it because you have to pay some money, right? We'll give it a C for cable. We don't want to do any brand endorsing, but so you got this itemized list, right? And on this list, it's got all these like dollar amounts, and then but then down here it's just like I don't want to throw any institutions under the bus, but it's just like the fees, right? Then you got all your fees that kind of balloon things. But if we actually break down what a cable bill represented, it kind of goes something like this, where let's say NBC, ABC, these affiliate networks, broadcast networks, we'll talk about that stuff in this class. But then cable channels, I don't know, CNN, don't be that way, okay, Fox News, whatever. FX, AMC, right? Your Zombies, your Mad Men, and so on. And all these channels, everybody gets. So if your bill is, I don't know, what's the cable bill somebody's had in their lifetime? Yeah, just throw a number. This is good. Let's say $150. Here's what that looks like. Now, obviously, let's say gets a lot of gets in on the fees, or Cox is a local. They used to have a monopoly in this metropolitan area, but AT&T really kind of came in and even the playing field, we'll put it. And there's technological reasons why too, like the way they pursued high-speed internet, right? The ability to offer a higher quality product creates what we call market competition. So anyway, they're going to get theirs in the fees and things like that. But the normal packages, even your things like the add-ons, HBO, Showtime, and so on, you're having to pay on those extra. But the normal cable, that's an extra tier. So the normal cable, I don't know, NBC gets, let's say it's like, I don't know, $1.15. So $1.15 out of every time you paid your cable bill, it goes to NBC's pocket, right? It goes to their bottom line where they're generating revenue, and all these networks are going to be pretty similar. So we'll just say there's a tiny bit of competition, right? And ABC gets $1.30 instead, and CBS gets, I don't know, $1.50 because they had like all the NCIS shows and like I suppose it's CSI, this and that, and those the cornball sitcoms and stuff. So they're getting their money like that. But then even your pay cable, so let's say, I don't know, CNN gets like 97 cents per your bill, Fox gets, I don't know, $1.05, and it just kind of breaks down like that. Well, a long time ago, and this is universal, everyone's bill was paying out the same. So no matter if you watch, let's say, well, cable news, right? If you watch this channel or not, or that channel or not, your money still goes to them, right? They're still getting off of you, even if you don't watch it. So Animal Planet, right? Oh, I don't have kids, I don't like animals, so I don't watch it. Well, you're still paying them money, right? You're still getting money out of your pocket. So for the longest time, and we're talking, I don't know, a couple of decades. I mean, cable's only been around since the early 80s, right? Cable and satellite kind of emerging at the same time. We'll get into that in a future week. But so they had this stable system where everybody's like the mafia, right? Of course it is. It's like Stories of America and how we mythologize everything. Entrepreneurship and so on. Everybody kind of got theirs, right? And so they were taking care of each other. But then you had these like outlier brands that were a little, I don't know, self-superior to others. So around the mid 2000s, the system was still really stable, and everyone's kind of getting this type of payout. And lo and behold, channel like ESPN. Now, there's a little bit of bias in here. We do have some athletes, we have some folks that are maybe in that primal life where sports is closer to home than not. But statistically, right, if you look across the whole country, not everyone is just totally plugged in with the sports world, right? But regardless, so when all these companies were making like $1.37, $1.50 or whatever for their channels, ESPN was pulling in something like $5.30, right, per subscriber. So buried in those secret cable bills all those years, even if you didn't watch ESPN, they were taking this huge majority share. And so some companies just kind of had this ability to like use a kind of imbalanced clout. Maybe they're just great negotiators, right? The Art of the Deal. Somebody wrote a book like that, or somebody ghost wrote a book that was co-authored by someone else. But there was even in the traditional cable bill, there was this disorganization. Well, so what have we done now? So now, and we'll cover this later when we move in time, the streaming age, right? We've got all of these, we were just talking about, I don't know, everything from your, Netflix to Prime, but we've got these recent offshoots. Peacock just launched in the fall, and Paramount Plus, what's that? Well, it used to be, it went through rebranding really, really early on. Do we remember even? It was CBS All Access. Well, that's not a catchy name at all. So you have this constant kind of rebranding. And what is Peacock? Well, Peacock is NBC's streaming network. What is Paramount Plus? Well, Paramount Plus is CBS's streaming network. Hulu has an exclusive contract with Fox, and then you hear programs now like, check it out on FX on Hulu, right? FX being within the Fox domain, and so what do you got here? You actually have, these are the NBC, CBS, ABC, which we're not going to get into the weeds too much, but ABC.
What does Sling have?
Well, Sling, we can talk about this. Sling is as its name suggests, it's kind of like YouTube TV, right? So we can put them in this different bracket where we could almost call them like, we could either call them internet cable, or I'm gonna be funny here. I'm gonna use the adult beverage term, cable light, right? You're getting, you get this sort of like rebranded cable for the streaming age. And so you do Sling, you do YouTube TV. Didn't they call it YouTube Red or something at first? It's always about branding and marketing. And what are they doing? They're giving you bundles. And what did Cox try to give you for a while? Bundles, right? They sell you on bundles. And I said, well, this bundle's cheaper than that one. And then they just creep up the price right after 3 months, 6 months. It just, all of a sudden your bill double, and you're like, and then you can't get a human on the phone. And that's the industry, right? And so you've got Sling, who was like Sling Box, and then, you know, just like branding, like they're like, simplify. You got to get the name in the consumer's minds. And so they keep cutting it down. ABC, if we didn't realize, right, ABC, ESPN, they're both, either one is its own thing, and they're both owned by Disney. No, by the way, they launched their own, right, which has, we want to talk about the market shifting. No one in the history of streaming has ever gotten close to, this alpha status that Netflix has, because they've had such a savvy market model for so many years. But wow, we could look at one of those time-lapse infographics, I'm sure, and you would just see how, like, you would see this dominance over year after year after year, and then, like, Disney Plus got like this in like a year and a half.
Well, it's because they have so much access to a lot more newer things.
Well, and let's not discount the fact that they're smart, they're savvy business model, right? And they know how to, well, first of all, diversified portfolio, and they know how to build a consumer base and grow it. They just flat out do. But they also operate like a monopoly, and they buy everything out. Because, by the way, they used to be separate. Disney, just in the last year, what'd they pay?
I thought they bought out ESPN last year.
They've owned ESPN since right around the start of the 21st century. But they bought Fox. And so they also secretly own Hulu. People don't realize that. So you could be paying Hulu, you'd be paying for Disney Plus, you'd be paying for ESPN Plus, right? Because we got that now for like $5.99 or $8.99. And so you could be paying for all three of these, and it's all owned by Disney. Well, now let's think about this. If this was unfair, and that was a reason that things like this is why cable collapsed as the dominant model, and people said, oh, that's so unfair, and I just want to pay for the only thing I want. But then what happened was, this is like casino management 101. What is it? The house always wins, right? The house, you can't beat the man, quote unquote. They're too good at this game. They invented it. And so they're going to get theirs in the end. We're back to the point I was going to make, and we'll get back on topic here, is that out of this, so people were upset that, let's say, only 37% of cable users were actually watching sports during the year. So that means like 60+%, a vast majority weren't even watching, but their number one, like the number one channels that were going toward their money, and then there's like Fox Sports or whatever, and they were getting like, I don't know, $1.50. But we're just making a point that sports was getting this lion's share of your cable bill, but people thought, oh, that's outrageous, so I'm going to drop my things. But then they found a way around it. So these networks that were only getting $1.50 of your cable bill are now charging $9.99 for their own streaming service, right? And so by collapsing cable and fighting demand and all the cord cutting, the piracy and the code sharing and stuff, what we've done is we bought into a different system that's hyperinflated, where we're going to pay 10 times the amount we were paying the individual networks. And that's a present, kind of conundrum we find ourselves in.
Well, I feel like it's more expensive now because now you have the option to watch what you want. More of as TV, it's like, okay, I can't watch this and something else at the same time, or if I do watch this and the next thing that I really want to watch is going to be over, you know?
Sure.
So now with the streaming device, you can watch, say, WandaVision, and you can watch like Falcon or whatever that show is at two different times and then not miss out on anything, you know? Which is probably why it's so expensive now because they have that sort of access to, we give you the ability to watch whatever you want, whenever you want, without missing any sort of, how do you say, exposure to the show, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So which is why they charge so much.
You're describing a phenomenon in the industry we refer to as time shifting, right? This is, in debate terms, what we call a net benefit, or net bins for short, right? A net benefit being an argument for time shifting. We can identify as a kind of spelling alert, luxury, right? It's a consumer luxury. It's like, I'm in a better place. I don't have to be in my house, like in front of a coffee table with, a microwave burrito to watch Friends when it airs live. I have the luxury. I can get whatever now it's HBO Max, but for the last 5+ years it was on Netflix. Right? I can just binge Friends nonstop all evening long and so on. Just burn through it. Can we watch any more Friends on this streaming service? And it is a market adaptation to a consumer need, but which it aligns with, the rise of the internet age, right? The information era that we find ourselves in, and all of this is catch-22 because hey, guess what? We've got all the many of our jobs are now locked in and tied into the information age, at least non-blue collar jobs, although even coding is kind of seen as a new variation of blue collar work, right? Because there's a tedious mundaneness to even something important like working IT. But it does tie around a theme relating to technology, right? And that'll be something that's always in conversation throughout this class. Let's talk about structure. How is this class? We did an excellent sort of conversational off-grid contemporary breakdown of, we answered the question like, why TV? Why study TV? And this will blow minds, but 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this might be contested in certain, institutional classrooms, right? The wrong people look at the schedule and say like, are you telling me you're getting together to watch television in a college classroom? And what is that about? And that's like an old-fashioned idea and this sort of worldview to kind of question that, especially today, but even 10 years ago, those kinds of courses existed, but they were so specialized, and you had to be at really large, narrow, universities to be able to find that. And that's not where we're at anymore. But we've answered a question in terms of like, on a consumer level, we're engaged in all of these acts, but on a communication level, we have the potential to enter this world, right, as idea makers, as content creators, as strategists, right? There's any number of roles that we could fulfill by increasing our understanding of this. And oh, guess what? Television, that's a really long and complicated history now. And there's hundreds and thousands of programs out there. So we could spend quite a bit of time engaging it. We'll just have to pick and choose. That's why, as our media history, right, course, we have to be choosy. Choosy moms choose GIF, right? So if we're choosy moms, GIF is represented in the form of what mass medium makes the most sense for us to look at in a historical perspective. And television is a great topic to cover in that context because it's both elongated In American history, we're going to start to kind of pick things up in the 1950s, and we're gonna move forward every week. But it's also relatively short. That is to say, we can get through it even in an accelerated, condensed time frame. And so we're using TV as find some new space here, right? TV is our mass medium of choice for this course. What's a mass medium?
Something that explains the mass amount of audience.
Okay. So when we think about mass communication is a one-to-many model.
Well, I give it like a radio, a podcast, something that projects something to a mass audience.
You're right. And other examples of mass comm include radio is another terrific example. Honestly, the film industry, film is a mass medium, it's one to many, even if it's collaborative, right? We get that, but it's coming from a source to many. You go in a theater, there's not multiple projectors going off, right? It's a projector sending a message to the masses. You also don't have the mechanism of feedback. Traditionally in television, you don't have the mechanism. It was sit down, park yourself, you receive our message, although the internet has changed things. It has exploded the difference between I can talk back, I can cord cancel, or I cord cut, or I can cancel things, or I can start my own social movement. And so, mass communication represents a one-to-many mode of communication exchange. And television is a mass medium historically. And so it's very rich in its dexterity in its evolution. And so we want to chart some of those paths as we walk through this information together. And it's feasible. All right. So we're going to approach television, and we've got 5 weeks. Now, obviously, this course functions all the time online in a certain way, and we've tried to figure out the happy medium between how we can achieve what we do in a normal 16-week semester in a 5-week cycle. So you're able to be a part of that experimental exploration of the boundaries of what we can tackle. Historically, we would try to break the course up into units, learning units, and when we're dealing with the history as a lens, right, meaning a way to look at the subject matter, the units could be chronological and historical, and we've kind of tackled them decade to decade at various places. Because we're so condensed, there'll be a little bit of this kind of blurring of the lines and merging of ideas. So really we'll explore a little bit of like the 50s and 60s this week, a little bit of, I can't commit to getting into the 80s by this week, but we'll see how far we get by the end of next week. I'll pause and we'll tackle something else. We will have a set of like some presentations in week 3. It's one of our 3 major projects. And then if we're on track, we'll get into the 90s or potentially have the 80s carry over here. And then in week 4, this sets us up to really kind of get into the aughts, which is really its own thing. And then week 5, maybe the teens, which we just came out of. We just closed a decade recently. And so this gives us a healthy overview of what's happened in about a 70-year history. We're going to kind of go through this. And we'll have some different tools. We'll screen some media each week. We'll try not to be too dominant in that. I think the more interactive and conversational we are, the more we'll be able to engage that side of things. And then when it's not functioning that way, we will work in some other ways, just making sure that I don't have anyone in the waiting room right now. Well, we've messied up this board really well. I've talked about the value of a lens, right? Just like when you take different courses, you want to have a certain amount of fixed focus, All right. So when we say, well, we could study all of media history, but in 5 weeks that could get sloppy, and maybe we could find ourselves not getting enough information if we were trying to go, well, let's go radio, let's go film, let's go internet, let's go television, right? And we're just really exploding too many ideas in a short amount of time. But by narrowing the focus, we're going to get a much richer sampling out of it. On the other hand, we have other classes in curriculum that can give us deep dives into other subject areas. So typically we have a class, Special Topics in Media Studies, and in Special Topics, when that course runs online, it tends to take the focus of mythic media in America and kind of look at the way myths are crafted and how American ideology forms, particularly around popular culture. And we use comics, the mass medium of comics, like comic books, graphic novels, and so on, to as a case study area to kind of pull out information. Now, when Special Topics runs on ground, typically in the falls, we take more of a film studies approach, which gives us yet another medium. And so what we're seeing here is our curriculum is designed in a way where we're going to get those exposure to different areas based on any given course. And over time, we start to kind of explore that in some healthy, diverse ways. But that's part of the media studies side of the major. And then there are the other side of the major where we'll focus more on advertising and marketing. And then that third tier where we're working on maybe more social media driven projects and assignments and things like that. So I mentioned in week 3, we will have the first of 3 presentations. And if you've checked out D2L yet, no judgment, I get it. It's for some of you, you literally just stepped on campus last night. We've refined this class and kind of brought it down to try to say, like, not simply what's its essence, but what can we do, what more can we do to service our students, to give them tangible projects to help you develop what we call our digital media portfolio. Increasingly, the degree itself cannot be like our landing spot where we say, well, got that degree, all right, just give me the job any old day, employer, right? We have to kind of we need to have ammunition ready to lock and load. We've got to come in not just confident, not just kind of capable theoretically in our mind's eye to take on these new challenges and roles, but we want to be equipped. We want to say, like, and by the way, I've been working on this number of things. And so we have strategic projects throughout the major. So it's like that you'll be accumulating as you go through courses. That's going to help you put together a healthy portfolio that's really looking at the different directions. That's another benefit, a net benefit, because job diversification is important. And even what you do in a single job is going to be diversified, right? So some days your task is more internal, like how do you market, how do you communicate within the organization? Then other tasks are more about how do you reach outside of your organization, like how do we step outside of the boundaries and do that? And so we're trying to kind of prepare you with a plural vision, right? We're looking in multiple directions at once, or we're training ourselves to, because that's not always easy. And we do that through a number of things. So we have 3 projects that we've rewritten into this course. It used to be a very writing-centric class. And part of the redesign was we want to get this more engineered to give us some real world experience, also to celebrate the kind of creative side of things. And also, it was kind of part of experimenting with what can we achieve in a classroom that's different from just simply, talk and then write, talk and then write. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very disciplined thing. But we have 3 assignments, projects, that we are going to tackle. And so week 3, week 4, week 5, basically we'll have as our due dates. We'll try to minimize all the other outside things to get out of our way, but I just want to put this in our hands in week 1, kind of get us thinking about it. It's the most analytic, I'll say this, of the 3 presentations, but as promised in the little video syllabus narrative that I shot out there, and those videos are all in D2L or the YouTube channel. We have all the prompts you will need are kind of like laid out here, and really it's about three major tasks we'll accomplish in here. We're going to do an anatomy of a scene or sequence presentation. So that's a presentation you'll prep for. You organize your thoughts into some notes. Like you want to type up some notes. Clarity is important. We're also working on being strong communicators in the major. But you'll show us a scene, something you can access, something you can like play for us, and then you'll have your talking points that you'll turn in like in the Dropbox and D12, and you'll just break it down for us using these simple prompts, right? And so it's both simple and complex at the same time, and that's good. There's rigor to it, but we want to develop on one hand our analytic eye, right? And not just because, oh, do you want to be a film critic, or oh, you want to be a filmmaker? It's not simply about TV or whatever media production, but it is about understanding if I learn to recognize the various moving parts of any given piece of media, I can gain mastery over that form. And by gaining mastery over that form, I gain competency. And by gaining competency, I'm gaining legitimacy, thus job candidacy, right? And so every one of these exercises are tailored to really strengthen and improve our cognitive skills, our critical thinking, but our mastery over a subject matter. This is just a great exercise. We're gonna have some fun conversations and just give you a chance to share. And so that's what's in the write-up here. Second exercise is more of an independent one. It starts with a similar premise. You'll take a scene or sequence, and you're gonna go off and you're going to storyboard it, right? And so I'll have lots on the news feed. I'll have a descriptive handout for that in a week or two. And basically storyboarding is the classical model is by hand. You're kind of drawing out a scene or sequence. Now we're going to make it even easier and say, take an existing scene or sequence, and then you're basically reverse engineer it. Like take something that exists and then storyboard it. That's pretty simple, but look for ways to add the rich descriptive detail that a production designer would do or a cinematographer would do, right? So what can you add, like create maybe the margins of these images about the lighting, maybe the set design, what is the dialogue being spoken, how should the camera be moving, and why is that important? And so this is another layering process that just gets us thinking deeper about mass media. Because if we can agree on anything, it's mass media is highly persuasive and we like it, right? And we use it. But one of our goals for you in the comm major is how do we learn how to shift gears to not simply being to use media instead of being used by media, if that makes sense. And what a day and age we live in where sometimes media has the power to use this, you know what I'm saying, right? There's a lot of like Uncle Franks at the Thanksgiving table that are kind of become like lightning rods, right? They become a mouthpiece for someone else's mouthpiece, if you know what I mean. And that's not, I'm not trying to alienate or isolate one single, type or demographic, but we all are susceptible to the persuasive power of mass media. And so this is a step toward us being better equipped to kind of handle that with legitimacy, with authority even. And we hope for that. So that's just something you'll turn in. You don't necessarily have to present on it at all. And then in the final week of class, or maybe final week, I don't know, maybe it's depending on how the time is structured in week 5, or if we have a special Zoom session or something like that, we're going to come together and we're going to have a program pitch. All right. And so just planting the seeds right now, we're going to have you work on coming up with an original program idea. And again, there's going to be a sheet full of prompts for you to think about. And it's just information to help you focus your ideas. But if the world's your oyster. If you had that one opportunity to put something together, to be a media content creator, and we're going to pretend in the direction of like a television type program, what would that look like? What would it be, right? What ideas are you interested in exploring or playing with? Well, you have time to think about that, and we'll just come together and have like a conversation about it and sort of practice pitching our ideas. This is something you'll do as professionals someday. Is you're going to get into meetings, and the meeting is going to have an agenda, and the agenda is we need good ideas. And you've got to be ready and capable of putting ideas out there in a clear manner, hopefully in a persuasive manner, right? You want to tap into that, regardless of what it's about or what you're doing. Just learning how to manage ideas and learning how to communicate and articulate ourselves. That's an important stuff. That's communication stuff right there. So we see where, despite the veneer of, oh, we're studying television, we're watching television, buried beneath all of that, the shiny fun stuff is a lot of fundamentals where we're going to work on enhancing our communication capabilities. So that we can be excited about that. And these weeks will fly by. They really will. And we'll fly by. All right, let's see. We have, what do we have on deck? I lament the fact that the time is so short and we could be trying to cram a lot of stuff in. Okay, where's the other printout? You know, the main one I need. It's not in this folder. That's where it is. All right, maybe it's upstairs in the printer. I might have to go check it out. We want to jump in and potentially screen some media. I think we want to have consider it like a dance. Every week we come together. We're going to look at some media, and we want to consider how it operates, how it functions, and if we, while media evolve, or television specifically, would be our focus, continues to evolve, some of its narrative infancy is rather consistent. So that is what I'm saying is the ways they made television in terms of its form still gets made in some contexts today. And I think one of the most rudimentary ways we can look at television is to consider its programming, all right? But even more, we can kind of give ourselves yet another lens to think about TV. There's a book that's not required for this course, but it's, I mean, I highly recommend it, whatever. But it's more of a literature review type read. It's a little bit drier is what I'm saying, may not operate well at the undergrad level, but it's called Television Studies, and it's from Jonathan Gray and Amanda Law. The first edition was published in 2012. And in this book, they organize a method, which is another word for a tool, with which they suggest scholars of TV should consider when studying television. And this is part of a movement within the humanities, within media studies, to really grow up a discipline capable of standing on its own, television studies, right, within media studies, but also on its own. And basically, they're trying to move the boundary and say, I think a classic mode of writing when we write about a subject matter is, I'm just going to look at it and react to it or report on it. And that can be a very healthy initial exercise, but they want to challenge us to do something more, be a little bit deeper. And so they identified 4 tiers that the argument is would give us a more well-rounded approach to considering television studies, okay? These 4 tiers are the content, that is to say, the content produced by television. We can think of content in terms of programs, right? Shows, texts is a word. The second term that they provide here, contexts, right? So context, for every content artifact that you look at, there's a context to it. There's a context to, let's say, why it was wildly popular when it came out versus was canceled early on in its run. Like, what was it about the way in which the content was distributed and received that made it, worthy of remembrance in the archives, or forgettable, right? Something to maybe be rediscovered later at a different time. So context always matters, and that matters just in a communication context. If we had a class where we use rhetorical rhetoric, rhetorical analysis methods to analyze artifacts, cultural artifacts, and ultimately we're looking for context because it gives us a ton of clues of what a text's persuasive values are. The third category and you know, whatever, they might flip-flop them in the order that they talk about it, but institutions. So institutions, we can think about the producers of the text, right? Or the economic means, even culture with which something grows up or comes out, right? How it gets put out there, how it's distributed, right? And we can understand the difference between maybe the way media operates in the US versus the way media operates in, let's say, I don't know, North Korea or, you know, Germany or Russia, right? Or Australia, right? South America, various regions of South America. There are differences, and it has to do with the institutions that govern the distribution of that media. And ultimately audiences, right? Mass media can't exist without an audience to consume it, right? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a noise, right? But mass media can thrives and exists on the lifeblood of its audience. And so by asking and answering questions of understanding, like, who is the audience for this, we can better understand the text. And we'll look at, so these will become like some crux categories for us to return to every week. And that's meant, not to bore you, but to provide simplicity so that we don't get too all over the map with our, you know, the way we're handling media in a given week. But it can kind of help us, right? So it's like, what is this show on Netflix? Virgin River, who's watching this? It's like this huge hit show. Nobody has to out themselves. No, but we know it's popular, but it's clearly guided towards some audience. Some audience is like, that's my jam. Give me more of that, and right? And how quickly can I burn through it? Or whatever kind of program, right? And we're at a place where television is such a booming economy, and we are absolutely including streaming in the conversation of television. It's an offshoot of the industry, and guess what? Oh, instead of being overwhelmed by all this media choice or being overwhelmed by our cable bill, if we truly are looking at careers in communication and mass communication, we can start to get excited about any time an economy is absolutely flooded. What does that mean? It means there's jobs out there, right? That means there's opportunities. We're trying to work through topic by topic to just get ourselves more equipped to enter that conversation, right? To enter the arena, to kind of join in some way, some form or fashion, wherever our passions lie, or maybe wherever the bread is, right? Who's going to pay us first or next to do some of this type of work. So that's some of the on deck adages to this. I mentioned the simplicity of form. This sitcom is a term we use short for situation comedy. And the sitcom, I've run out of board space. I can flip this around. I might, play bumper cars, like banging against all these things. The sitcom had a very straightforward method of production, right? In other words, there was a very efficient assembly manner in which TV was produced for the sitcom. The sitcom, let me go ahead and flip this around here. Well, we can flip this back later. But the sitcom basically was a program. You can kind of think of it like live theater, except it was recorded. Let's get this back in the limelight here. You would basically have a television or broadcasting studio, right? So let's say a studio, not unlike a film studio, it's basically a warehouse that's equipped to handle, an industrial amount of labor. But within the studio, you might have, or what also might be called a sound stage, right?
You have multiple sets.
Yeah, you're gonna have multiple sets. And typically with the sitcom, you basically probably have three sets, like an A set, a B set, and a C set, right? So, and the curtain's been pulled way back on this. In fact, they're making Lego, right? We're familiar with Legos. They make Lego sets now for some of these sort of nostalgic sitcoms. You've seen these maybe in stores or on the internet. So it's just my algorithm. But something like Friends or Seinfeld
they have the Lego, oh, Big Bang Theory. All of these shows have Lego sets now. And it's not just like minifigs that look like these characters that we recognize, these iconic characters, but the set itself resembles a set. So you might have the, I don't know, let's say like apartment, right? That's a very common situational set. But it even has like the lights, you know, up overhead, and you know, all these kind of clever, very inside winks about how it's a production. But you're gonna have like your A set, so apartment. Your B set's probably like the office, right? Or someone's work, and then a C set. Friends had like what, a coffee house. Seinfeld had a diner. Can we think of any other like C sets where recurring situations would take place? Anything like that? Non-TV, that's non-TV. No, but for this sitcom, so not only do they have these fixed sets, but they also have this space where they could historically film in front of a studio audience, right? And could often hear this in a kind of intro voiceover, like film in front of a studio audience or something like that, right? So all these people will come out, let's say on a Thursday. Typically they would film on a Friday evening or something, and so the stage crew and the performers and the technical people, they would come in, rehearse, do like a dress rehearsal, both maybe day before and morning of or something on the sets, and then they would do like a live taping. And they have the ability sometimes to start, stop, but that's not really the way the model's set up. And that's why everyone's got to be on their game and be a professional, because they are, because it's expensive, right? And they're all professionals. But one of the things that made the sitcom innovative from early television, right? So we're talking about the boob tube, right, as it's called, is just the standardized manner of mass communication. One of the many was the sitcom innovated television by shooting using now my SoCal dudes are probably, they were just like, this is the old stuff, man, get past this. But we had the 3-camera setup, right? This was one of the earliest innovations of form. And so you have the whole, functionality behind the 3-camera situation was, you don't need to shoot like a film would from a scene 10, 15, 25 times from every possible angle. And just constantly move your lighting and your set design and your sound and your mics and your camera. You would have 3 relatively, there's a little bit of swivel motion available to them, but not much early on. 3 cameras, right? Again, you're going to have kind of an A of let's, B, C. And then these cameras could get the various sort of establishing shots of characters, of individuals interacting, but then have these sort of like cross takes, right? So you can then get what we call like a shot, reaction shot, establishing shot, reaction shot. And, somewhere in the whatever, maybe back here, editing studio, depending on the type of programming it is. Then you have your live editors and your director, and he's got a mic in his hand. Sometimes on television, they're probably right here. And they're making these calls like, all right, cut to camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and just kind of back and forth. Well, there's an efficiency to the strategy, right? Not rebuilding sets all the time, that's expensive. Not moving the audience around, that would be expensive, moving that stuff. Not having to have 50 cameras everywhere, not just relying on one camera. Time is money, so that's expensive. This was about an industrial model, right? So an industrial model to make television an efficient mechanism of mass communication. And that's a model that still gets used today. It carries over, all right? And so we were going to take from that and look at an early artifact of TV and sort of have some Q&A questions to go with that.
these would be the questions I'm like looking around for, like, where'd those questions go? I'm gonna run upstairs. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start us on one, and then as soon as I grab those, I'll hand them out. We're gonna look at we're gonna sample something from the 1950s, all right? So we will challenge our attention spans at times to see if we can kind of handle that load. And then just have a little bit of a discussion about the takeaways, okay? And so one of the most popular programs of that time is, or was, I Love Lucy. Oh, Lucy, have we heard of this show? Have we seen this show? Have we seen the show in a
I haven't
college?
seen it, but I had a professor talk about it in
Uh-oh.
like a TV media class.
Yes. So we're going to check out some of an episode and then have a little bit of a discussion about that. Whoa. Hey, hang on. Something to, I think one of the reasons we can look at and appreciate the text, though, is that, and our writers of one of the books go into a nice little detail about it, right? The book, which is co-written by a pair of TV critics, pretty prominent TV critics, Alex F. Wall and Matt Zoller Seitz, but they will cover, as many media historians do, how this text innovated because this was one of the first instances where TV wasn't being controlled exclusively by the production company, or maybe even by, like, I don't know, governmental bodies or whatever, that the husband and wife duo, right, Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, were producers of their own show, and what that meant was a new kind of power and control over the quality of the product. Not just quality of the product, but the product itself. So this was a unique program in that they did actually film it on film stock. And one of the most successful takeaways from this was because they produced it through their production studio, they retained the film stock. So they owned the rights to their own show, which was unheard of in television infancy. And the second unheard of in television infancy was that the content itself and the information was stored, that it was kept, okay? Otherwise, it was thought of as disposable. That is to say, like radio, it's going out there, but nothing's capturing it. We're consuming it, but nothing's capturing it, right? And they were forward thinking enough to archive and protect their content because they were able to sell that into a new term, right? Syndication over subsequent decades. And it really kind of was the bedrock of an incredible career. This show is sort of like, it actually didn't last as long as people think or remember. Only a few seasons, really, but they did have a follow-up show, the Lucy Show. But they were actually more successful at producing TV after this for decades to come. And so this is, kind of like there's a way in which we can kind of look at the show, appreciate the text, but also be thinking about things that relate to what kind of new ground is breaking. Questions to ask. Again, I'll grab those questions we can talk about, bring them back. But I'm just trying to think about what the questions regarding pacing. We'll have that discussion. Obviously, it's going to feel different than what we're used to now. It's not going to cut and be edited in the same way that shows you love are, whether Office or Arrested Development or whatever. It's just not going to have that same feel. But doesn't mean we can't appreciate it, and you can maybe compare it to things like Big Bang Theory or some of these kinds of classically framed sitcoms. So we're going to look at a little bit of that, and also the fact that it's allegedly a comedy, right? Does the comedy hold up? Is there anything to laugh or appreciate about it, right? Because again, on the other side of the board, we were talking about context, right? Comedy is often contextual, and this is why we have variations of genre form. Audiences find one thing, hilarious, and other audiences don't, right? Rom-coms are they're crass, right? Or they offend, I don't know, older generations or conservatives versus youth comedy, right? People might, like, children laugh at
these Disney Channel shows that other people kind of roll their eyes at because it's too campy and so on. So comedy is subjective, right? It's as subjective as it gets. But this is an opera. This was really a showcase of these performers. Lucille Ball had some classical experience in vaudeville. Honestly, there's a lot of that kind of over the top stage presence. As Yarnez, also a real life entertainer, notably one of the most notable takeaways. I think the first Latino American to be able to kind of have that presence on television and to not be, and to be also in like not a supporting role, in a competent lead role, and that's not insignificant. It's very significant. So there's a lot of things that we can value that's going on here. And then just kind of, we'll break it down a little bit more. We'll have a brief discussion, but then we'll want to hit some other things before we close out tonight. So let me just cue this up and then I'll go track down, right? These mystery discussion questions, see if I left anything out. Just to give us a little prompting here, okay? So I'll do that. I'll be right back. I'm going to get this going.